Hi folks, this is Ken Rust with Louisiana Pond Management, and I just want to talk today about a subject around a question we get quite frequently. What kind of fish do I want in my pond? And the kind of fish you want in your pond depends on what your goals are. That's key. What do you want to get out of your pond decides what sort of management decisions we're going to do on the front end. We're going to talk about sort of a traditional approach. We're going to look at a couple of fish that you might not see every day. And then we're also going to look at some different approaches for fishing ponds. So just to start off right from the very beginning, we're looking at a great largemouth bass. Everybody wants to see this bass come out of their pond, but you have to do the correct management on the front end to get him. And that's okay because we can get you there. It's very formulaic. We want to watch for some issues and move through that process to get that bass in your pond. Traditional bass fishery is supported by forage fish because they are predator fish and they're going to eat bass. The bass are going to eat bluegill, shellcracker, and then other forage species in the pond. So the goal with a bass bluegill fishery is to have a sustainable fishery where both fish are spawning. You're strategically removing a segment of that population each year and keep it in balance. Bass and bluegill both like to be around structures, so they're in similar environments. They're available to each other and for a healthy predator-prey relationship. So this is the top of the food chain. This is our bass. And then we have this lovely bluegill here. It's an adult. It's fat. It's been directly fed from an automatic feeder. It has great body conditioning, and as a result, it's going to be spawning regularly producing eggs. Those are going to be fry. Some of those are going to make it up to be fingerlings and large fingerlings. All are available for the bass to consume. Second forage species, usually stocked at half of the rate of bluegill, is a red ear. In Louisiana we call them chinkapin. They're also nicknamed shellcracker. One of the reasons they're called shellcracker is that because they eat mollusks and crustaceans quite readily as a preferred food source. And so you're adding sort of an extra trophic level in your pond while bluegill are eating primarily zooplankton as young fish. These fish are eating small mollusks and crustaceans. So a great combination there for bass bluegill fishery. Now this is another sunfish. This is a green sunfish, and this fish is a wild native fish and can appear frequently in ponds. You just don't want them reproducing in high numbers, and you would not stock this fish. It's a beautiful aquarium fish. Actually, if you'd like to put it in an aquarium, it's one of the prettier sunfish. However, they can interfere with the productivity of a good bass bluegill fishery. These are just large numbers of green sunfish that we've removed through electrofishing. So then you can also have a young gizzard shad out there. He's not really going to be hanging around structure as much, but a gizzard shad is good forage for largemouth bass. They're just not gonna. They're gonna have to work a little harder to catch them because they're out there swimming in the middle of the pond rather than hanging around in structure. Gizzard shad can, as they live to be adults, can grow quite large, and when they do, those are really unavailable for the bass to take out of the equation, so that they can keep on providing reproduction in the pond and feeding your bass population as another layer of forage in there for your largemouth bass. This is a little silverside. It's a wild caught silverside. We just seined him up, and these have been grown and stocked in the past. This is just a little wild incident, but you can see this fish doesn't have a lot of bones. He's small. He's readily consumed by young bass, and then it's just a great source of protein for them. This is a larger gizzard shad here, and again, that's not going to be taken out by a largemouth bass, but it will create quite a bit of reproduction in there and forage for your bass. As we do electrofishing and sample population surveys, you see we've got a grass carp in here. A common carp in here, and then we also have a couple of white crappie. White crappie can be found in ponds, especially anything that's flooded from natural waters. Occasionally you'll get a common carp in there. We really don't like to see these. I love to eat and catch. I love it to get our sockeye or our white perch in there, but they are frequently not going, they're either going to overpopulate or they're going to survive and they're going to be really thin. So this fish looks great, but when you turn him to the side, he's very, very thin. And so they're not doing great in this pond. However, if they did manage to spawn, then they're going to actually interfere with your bass bluegill fishery, the sustainable fishery that you have out there as the primary goal. So there he is again. Again, great length on this fish. He's just not very thick and not much to eat there. All right, so wild catfish are not your friend in your pond. Channel catfish are typically grown in pond situations and in commercial aquaculture. Blue catfish sometimes, but these, and then a yellow catfish like this, they're edible. Their meat is just as good as anything. They're just not very productive, and they can also, again, interfere with your primary goal of a bass bluegill fishery, because these fish are a little more predatorial, and they're going to go out there and interfere with reproduction on fish nests and things like that in the pond. So this is what you would like to see, pulled out of your pond. Maybe a little bit smaller. They've waited too long to remove this catfish. However, what a wonderful fish to catch out of a large pond here and take that fish and eat. And usually commercial catfish are harvested 1.5 to 2 pounds, and this one's grown far past that, but he looks like he enjoyed catching him. Again, channel catfish, forked tail there that you can see. It's a great eating fish, fast growing fish, up to about 2.5, 3 pounds, and wonderful fish to eat and a great stocker for your pond. When you stock catfish in your pond, or some of these other species that we're going to talk about, that is what you call a put and take fishery. Catfish are container spawners, and if they don't have a container, meaning a trash can, a culvert, a tire out there that's in the pond, or a dugout bank, an old hollow log, something like that, they're going to reabsorb those eggs, which is exactly what you want them to do. Catfish are very successful at reproduction, and you want to put a controlled amount of catfish in your pond, raise those fish, harvest those fish, eat them, and then resupply them with fingerlings at your discretion. You don't want catfish reproducing in your pond. So this is another great fish for a put and take fishery. So not a reproductive fish. This is a hybrid striped bass, and it brings great smiles because it grows fast, and better than that, it is really aggressive and fights. It's a wonderful sport fish to catch, and it takes feed directly, so it does not have to be supported by a forage population, although it is definitely a predatory fish as well. There's another one. Great eating fish. It's also a commercial aquaculture fish, and available in some restaurants that you might visit. This is just an odd fish that we collected through electrofishing. He had come over from a small river that flooded into a pond. It's mostly found in brackish water. It looks like a little flounder. It was a big surprise for us. I just thought I'd include him in my pictures today because he's so cool. That's a hog choker, by the way. And then lastly, this is a fish that I grew up catching in ponds behind the house, and it is a goggle eye. And this fish is predatory, but he's welcome mix into your bass bluegill population. Not really any interference there. Just a great sport fish. He fights well, eats well, and grows well in ponds all across the southern United States. So hope that helps. Just to recap, bass, bluegill, and red ear are your mainstays in a bass bluegill fishery. And then you can layer on top of that catfish. You just don't want them to reproduce. And then you can also stock some other forage species. We mentioned, there's threadfin shad, gizzard shad, and we do not want to put sockeye or white crappie in a pond. So I hope that helps you decide what sort of fish you should put in your pond, and we look forward to communicating with you in the future. Ken Rust, Louisiana Pond Management.